I'm a K-drama fan. Same experience, you get bound by that and may become prisoners of that. So I think that's one mistake I think companies often do. I talk about it repeatedly, taking feedback with grace. I had a good girl syndrome. Every time feedback was given, I would be like, I think I'm not doing my job hard enough or well enough, or something's amiss. And I would keep doing the same thing, and I think the mistake that all of us who don't take to feedback or become defensive at feedback is uh, it's like, the analogy I can see is you're on a treadmill, you try to run faster and faster and faster, but you're not going anywhere. You're making the same mistakes. I think that's what I would tell my 25-year-old self: learn to take feedback. Bankers are boring, and banking is boring. It is not. I've been here for last 10 years, and every day is pretty much a new day for me with new challenges. And I think banking is at the cusp of data technology, forefront of economy, right? So you get to see the challenges and the opportunities at a different scale. And it's, digital, fintech, every possible revolution, we are at the forefront. So it's fascinating. And being in a service industry, HR is even more required. So from my job standpoint, I think um, banking is truly fascinating and evolving and fun.
When you look at the future, what skills will HR people need in the next five
Telling
years?
problem solving skills and learning to work with data. One of the things that we under index on, we talk about the humanness and all of that, but all of us forget that we all need to operate as category managers in e-commerce companies, right? Learn to live with data, understand the patterns and insights with data. I think, uh, especially even in your field, like learning the kind of personalization that AI is going to do and bring. So not only digital literacy, but learning to work with data and analytics and seeing patterns is going to be a huge advantage.
Okay, so now I'll switch to the main interview. But in this, I wanted to introduce you with three non-work related, you know, pieces of trivia. One, I know that you are big into saris and all of that. So, how would you describe it? That you're a sari collector, or would you say that?
I love weave collector. Let me put it this way: weaves collector from various states. Um, yeah, I love it.
Which of the states do you have the most saris from?
Most saris, Orissa, unfortunately. I was just, in fact, today only I was rummaging through my closet and I said, I just have too many Oriya saris, Sambalpuri, cuts, and various kinds. So, Orissa, followed by obviously Kanjivarams and Banarsi. Banarsi also, and Chanderis. MP is also so. So I binge on Korean drama series and I like to travel.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for being here. And today I want to introduce to you a person who is really fond of Korean drama. And so, with this, let me introduce to you Raj Kamal Vempati. She is the CHRO of Axis Bank, which employs more than 100,000 people in India and outside. So, is that correct? Did I get the number?
Outside, yeah, fair bit, but not so much, but largely Indian bank. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Rajkamal. I want to actually start with one little piece of trivia which I didn't mention, which is that both of us share the same alma mater, and when you look at banking, one of the pieces that people actually think about banking is that it's a very regulated industry. There's so much that you can and cannot do for obvious reasons. There's financial prudence and all. In this culture, do you think HR really has a lot of flexibility to really do things outside the box? And is it one of the things which you would really say has changed over the years?
Thank you, Abhijit, for having me. And, you know, I thought being from the same alma mater, you'll, give me a loose ball. Uh, in the beginning, at least, as to start off the conversation. But it's a fascinating topic and something that we wonder. I think, first of all, just a little bit trivia. I never wanted to be in a bank in Excel, and I actually ran away from all the placements that were happening for bank, and here I am. So that's why so little you know when you're young. But having been in a bank and in the financial services industry, I just think the things really are fascinating because of regulations, right? Obviously, there is their execution of strategy in that sense becomes a lot more easy and complex at the same time, right? It's very simple to say follow the regulations, but obviously the room for making mistakes is limited, especially the fact that we are selling the biggest asset, which is trust, and that's the biggest asset any bank has. From an HR standpoint, especially with the demographic advantage drag, etc., whatever you call, the point is you have 100,000 people, none of them can make mistakes, and you know how coddled the younger generation is, right? So you're trying to train them, getting them on board, getting them to learn, because a lot of us have forgotten to learn, especially with regulations, etc. So the challenges at various levels. But I think the question if I were to elevate the conversation, what is being a regulated industry mean? It means that the tone of governance needs to be set in. And in that sense, HR has a seat on the table from a governance standpoint. We are expected to play the role of the governance or the conscience keeper, setting the tone on culture. But at the same time, and I can talk from my experience, it's a myth that regulation and innovations are, in a sense, oxymoronic words. They're not really. Because what is regulation saying? To good compliance is good business. That's it. They're not saying stop innovating on your HR trends, practices. In fact, I can tell you, we're the only bank, perhaps at a large format level. We've in the non-customer facing roles, we are working hybrid, 2 days a week in office and the rest rostered. 27% of our workforce in non-customer facing is working remote. We are okay. And we've stuck to it since 2020. That's when we announced. And prior to that, we had barely one application, which was the email, which was where we could work remote. We've made, and the dilemma that we had earlier, what is your workplace, whether laptop or, is it an in-office system? We've kind of made the entire productivity tool for our frontline staff on phone, because we said we've got to go digital. Nobody's stopping us. And it's not about just the HR apps of, I'm not talking about transactional stuff, but really trying to get everything what the employee can do for the customer on the email, and taking it to a different level where there are nudges to say how you are speaking, what you can do, etc., etc. Nobody's stopping us. We have a thriving internal talent marketplace where, and at scale, we are doing it, and I'm talking about HR innovation, right? And I think we are the only bank who's doing it at such a large format level. Basis skills, again, nobody's stopping us. So the point that I'm saying is, whether you want to leverage technology or do innovation in any area, through data and other things, or build some capability, I don't think compliance is restrictive in any sense. I think mindsets have to be more abundant, not moving from saying this is the boundary condition, I have to work. If you start just working being compliant on the boundary conditions, I think the line that you need to cross will never get crossed, which is what are the possibilities. I think possibilities within the broad boundary conditions. And I think the journey is going to be fascinating, because one thing that I didn't mention, in banks we have access to technology, digital, data, all of that we are doing for the customer. It's the same experience if you get into the employee front as well. And we are present in every nook and corner. So we have India, Bharat, all kinds of stories running. And people talk about generations. I have different kinds of generations of people who have different aspirations. First generation learners will have very different mindsets. So I think at least now, given whatever headwinds, I feel HR is even more required and can do so much more in terms of innovation and breaking some boundaries in terms of thinking of what needs to be done and what are the new um, formats of products that you need to offer.
One of the theories that talks about constraints is that constraints actually drive innovation.
Innovation, yeah.
A lot of frugal innovation certainly comes from that. But when you look at your career journey, you've recently completed 10 years at Axis Bank. And if you were to look at HR as it was when you started, and what are some of the shifts that have happened if you think about some of those pivotal moments when change happened, some of which may have been triggered by you, some of which happened to you.
I can just say early on when I got into HR, I was a consultant, then I got into HR maybe 2 to 3 years later in my career. When we were setting up training program, we would focus a lot more on menu, and the menu and the venue were really the deciding factors, right? And I had one of my managers who would painstakingly tell me the seating, how it should be done, and all the facilitation, etc. I don't think we are spending as much time on menu, or like my husband said, HR is just supposed to organize some events and do this engagement activities. So HR has definitely moved more beyond the samosa parties and the rangoli competitions. I think 2, 3 things have happened. We've been at the cusp of, especially when I joined, my career took off when Indian industries, 2, 3 industries were growing: telecom, insurance, financial services, many industries, right? Around the same time that we were seeing post-liberalization industries and licenses being given. So I've seen the growth phase, understanding of business, working with business, stakeholders, working the blueprint. What is the people strategy required? How will we make money? What does it mean? What does productivity mean, etc.? So I think the conversations for me shifted, at least from the last century to this century. In the first decade, it was all about growth and nurturing leaders and finding the leaders for industries where skills and talent wasn't available. It wasn't, you may wanted, if you wanted to buy insurance or hire insurance professional, where were the insurance professionals available from? So you have to think of skill adjacencies, and that, I think, has been my enduring learning. That, past experience, don't just get pigeonhole people into sum of experiences. They have some of experiences, but some of experiences in terms of traits that they bring in, don't look at just generally skills. I think that's what, for me, it was largely in the first decade, was a lot more hiring, and perhaps productivity, and perhaps conversations on building leaders and skilling at some form or the other. The next decade, I would say, has been interesting because headwind started, and I think as the economy had its own share of ebbs and flows, so the HR professional also changed, matured for me, and technology also aided that thing. So for whatever would take years and years of files, kind of paperwork, etc., went away. So the transactional processing job changed. HR became more silent in terms of the way processes are handled, but it meant more responsibility, especially any digital process where you're expected to do multitask more, right? So you needed to have multi-skilled generalists who are learning all the time. So your learning programs and learning shift happened there. Frontline attrition is a reality, at least in financial services, managing that. And what can you give? How can you promise careers to people who are maybe flirting with the job? They're not in making careers. And how do you give careers to people, or meaning to their careers, and bringing purpose to people when they want, again, instant gratification and all of that? Performance management models also matured, and conversations around whether performance management models are required, not required, also forced organizations to look at it. So that's been the second decade, and also building leaders with the risk and compliance mindset. productivity, profitability mindset, right? And that has been a journey itself. This decade has been a lot more about regulations and working within regulations and working within that constraints and growing with purpose. And here again, I would say skills. I think a big thing on skills and the format of work that's changing and the format of organizations that is changing, which is where for me, I think the big trend I would say is in every sphere of HR life, HR product, and I'm calling hiring a product, or let's say training a product, or in every category, a lot more technology has gotten blended, a lot more analytics has gotten blended, and also you are solving problems at scale, and you should be thinking through from first principles what are the problems that you're solving, and ensuring that with business you're solving some business problems, like for instance, hiring is not about just getting the right person, but how do you get a person who's productive, and how you building young talent into bankers, what are their life experiences that you need to give, how are the performance management systems working, and working through that. The other thing that I think in the last 5 years is the wellness part. After COVID, obviously, spotlight has happened. So there's a lot more focus on counseling, advocacy, on mental health, and even physical and financial well-being, which we don't speak about. Over-leveraged Indian is also a reality with all the gaming sites. And fortunately, some of that government has taken away. But still, this entire speculative business was also driving some kind of behavior. So there are three kinds of well-being that I think HR also needs to work on. So it's, as you would see, the way that I've painted the story, for me, it's getting into newer spaces. Personally, for me, the journey last 5 years, I can talk about it. It's been fascinating. I never thought that work could happen remote. The fact that you and I are speaking itself is an example of work can happen remote, and what is work really, right? So I was talking about the fact that we are the only bank where we say that we are working hybrid and non-customer facing. Non-customer facing roles, because it's regulated, we can't do it. 27% are work remote, and others work hybrid. And the matrices it's not about diversity matrices, right? It's not, 55% are women who leverage it, but there are 45% people who are men who are also leveraging it, right? That's been made possible. The fact that diversity, equity, inclusion, I think we're still talking about it. That's not changed. I think a little bit more needs to be done. Internal talent marketplace, and hiring externally is easy. I think companies will be forced to look inwards as we look at building skills, which is what you need to have more focus on your skill taxonomy and all of that. That's happened in the last definitely 2 years, something that we worked on. Learning also has become bite-sized. At least that's one experiment that we worked at scale, and that's yielded fantastic results. Reels and bites. I never thought I would see. I moved away from tablecloths color to saying that the content duration has to be so many hours. And think about content itself. Or we would take maybe 7 to 8 days just to create a good quality content, and say 7 days is good enough. Now with AI and everything, it's a matter of seconds. So world is changing. We've got to change, and I think as we're getting into different spaces, I'm seeing new opportunities and newer spaces and newer capabilities emerge, even within the team. So I think I'm actually very optimistic about the future. It is, and this entire question, sorry to say, in every conference, HR has seat on the table, yeah, you are business. Make yourself relevant in any place. You will make yourself relevant. Yeah, who's asking? Nobody. If people seek permission and say, "Oh, I need to," so somebody asked me, "Oh, do you do? What did they say? Do you get involved in org structures and org structure design?" I said, "Of course, because it's 101 of HR."
Yeah.
Yeah, 101. Said, "No, I don't know how to get into it because my CEO doesn't believe." I said, "Okay." So so you've got to figure out what is your role. So if you think your role is going to be just a manager of HR products and services, your role will be defined like that, right? If you say that I am here to realize um, the aspirations of the or ensure the strategy is delivered on the people side, you'll work accordingly. Or you'll say, oh, I'm building leaders to make the strategy happen, you'll work differently. So I think in every phase, you need to figure out what is the role that you're taking up and deliver accordingly.
When you look at large organizations, how do you ensure, the cultural values that you are looking at? It's so much easier when you are working with 20 people, 200 people, 2,000 people. But when you're looking at past 100,000 people, um, is it even possible to think about building culture at scale? And if so, what are, two or three things that somebody must keep in mind if that's what they intend to do?
I didn't speak about in terms of, maybe earlier I never thought of culture as a living being or something that you need to nurture like a sapling. What I've realized, definitely, especially, that's a space which enables people to have conversations about what they are seeing, and you have to create those spaces. And it's imperative that you remind people through stories, who are you, what's your identity, because uh, as much as we want to believe people love big brands, they don't. uh, you are part of your squad is your boss, and that's the tribe that you belong to, and it's so easy if that relationship is tenuous, and it's increasingly not so intimate anymore. And that's what the intimacy of for the organization needs to be created by those conversations. One of the experiments that we did, and actually on this area we worked a little bit more extensively than others. Every started with we call it, we value realizers. We had a band of 1,000 people um, who took on the mantle of having spreading this culture or having conversations on our values and stories and collecting stories and recognizing the usual thing back for the 100,000 people. And we realized at some level, maybe the model is flawed, because what we were expecting is, I would say there are value realizers. Abhijit is a value realizer. He has 5 branches or 10 branches, teams which may not report to him. And these are mid to senior level people. That didn't yield as much result. And I think why? Because somewhere we were cutting off the chain. It was like people working a little bit in a siloed manner horizontally, slicing the organization. So one is the mechanic and the framework of it. We have to talk. So the experiment that we worked on, and which is at least working initially well, is the fact that each function has to talk about values and what does it mean. What are the even metrics? We love matrices, right? We love our data in banks. So metricize the cultural anchors also. So if you're saying, okay, speed means what? I don't want any pendency. What are the kind of zero pendencies that you will have? So everything is metricized, and that conversation cascade is working on. And we've also offboarded some AVR, the access value realizers, or onboarded some new more. So just keep it dynamic. And culture is really critical because it sets the leadership tone. It sets the culture on compliance, conduct, reminding people of the honor code that they belong to, right? This is, if there is a certain honor in working with any organization, and every institution has its own culture, and alter what you don't want. So talking about it, even in the microcultures. But it is super, super critical. What I've realized is that space of conversation is the only space that people say, oh, it's subconsciously there, but when you put it out openly, and oh, others are also feeling like this, maybe we need to do something about it, right? You are giving shape to the aspirations and fueling change through that process. It's super critical. I can't tell you how critical it is, especially the more we become inanimate and tech driven. I think this is a space that you need to nurture.
Don't go away. I'm going to talk to Rajkamal Vempati, CHRO of Axis Bank, and I'm going to ask her a lot more about stuff like upskilling. I'm going to talk to her about analytics in HR, and of course, some aspects about what does it feel like to work with Gen Z. When you look at upskilling people in the world of AI, This is really something that is going to take a lot of people, especially large organizations, have to think about scaling up, uh, upskilling this whole business. And what is a strategy one should be thinking of if you were to give an advice? How would you go about building that strategy? What would be the design principles and building blocks?
Basic building blocks and the same principles will be applicable. Have a skill taxonomy, create academies, make some academies aspirational, include it like have a ladder approach. One of the things that we experimented with is had 3 academies. We had data analytics and um, digital academy. Obviously, at that time, digital was the buzzword. Everybody gravitated to analytics and then digital, etc. And then they didn't see the proof point what is happening after that. They would get the certification and wonder what's the certification for. Obviously, learning for learning's sake is good. And one of the fascinating things that we realize is the people in my age group, 40 and 50, were the ones who were learning because they thought they will get obsolete. But the younger ones who needed to learn weren't learning as much. So 2, 3 things that we've done, created some discipline about learning, especially at scale, because if I'm a parent, I know my daughter on her own, she may not want to learn as much, right? Given a choice. So getting the habit inculcated, getting some discipline around learning. So we have some mandatory courses that you need to do. You need to clock in certain hours. All of that we've kind of put in. Create academies which link to career. So, and we have a thriving internal talent marketplace, and I'll talk about that. Every job is posted. People apply. People can, if there's a job is graded above, you get your promotion with all the benefits, etc., and with the skills. So it's like an internal LinkedIn is what we want to develop. So if you BYOC, build your own career academy. So through that process, we are cross-pollinating, making people multi-skilled, and creating the creating what do I say? Creating a pull for learning. Third thing that we are doing through reskilling and upskilling is using AI, which I talked to you about. On our app, the endeavor is to personalize learning journeys to the n is equal to 1 level, and that's possible today. Which means creating lots of assets. You will need 20 to 25K assets, especially bite-sized assets. That, at least for us, whatever experiments we've done, has yielded tremendous results. We've seen 30 to 40% uptake in people who do it versus people who don't. So using the app to figure out where your skill, where you're lacking, giving that kind of remedial program and journey is another thing that we are doing. So I think it is not one size fits all, and also don't think of people as homogeneous in all of this. So which is where learning team members also have practitioners also have to figure out how do you segment, because one thing that is for sure in AI, what is it doing? It's the ability to personalize and segment is the key thing that you need to do, and which is the same framework you need to apply for even employees as well, and use it to upskill, reskill your entire talent workforce.
When you think about segmenting employees, what is unusual segmentation that you've sort of looked at? And there are the usual things about demographics and generations and all of that. But what is an unusual way that you feel we have not really looked at in addressing employee needs?
Interestingly, for me, geography is a big segment. Geography, kind of branch, kind of footfalls, what is, especially if you think about retail, what kind of customers are walking in, not really about what kind of a branch, where is it, what kind of customer queries are coming through. We're doing that. We're also doing another segmentation, which is working well, because we have a ton of academies and we are building people right from get-go. We hired 10 to 12,000 people. What was their skill level there to now segmenting theirs to see the journey. But right now we are really looking at hard matrices. The interesting thing is how, especially with AI, given the agentic stuff, They can do real-time data in terms of how the person is speaking. Are they following a script? We're doing that. What kind of bosses do they have? Bosses' skill levels also determine, we've realized bosses' skill level also determine the team skill levels. So we're segmenting on that. Uh, so around 57 vectors is what we are segmenting people on, but it's just learning on the go. I don't think anything fascinating's come, except for initially we realized women, there's a big difference in gender. Women were very good at learning for the job, but not learning for the future. The BYOC stuff doesn't come naturally. So trying to create those nudges to say that, please apply for the jobs as well, be ambitious.
Look at AI related shifts that are happening. A lot of people talk about um, the fact that the entry level jobs are dropping in so many sectors. What's going to happen to banking? Where does the future lie in banking?
It's a question I think about, because stuff that the transaction processing rules will get eliminated. And I was telling, like, if you ask, like, I was in Madurai, and I asked the young women there, some of them, what is it, especially one people who've not joined us, just checking the candidate pool. Their their expectation of a banking job is there's a checkbook, passbook, customer walks in into the branch, and that those days are gone. No, branch after branch of any format, any retail format, the customer walk-ins have gotten limited, especially with digital being there. They are also self-serving themselves. So for us, the relationship management rules will remain, because that is what gives trust. You should ask the question, why should then brick and mortar formats exist? Gives trust in the neighborhood. Relationship management means some of the skills that you were doing on phone, you've got to go out there, complex queries will get answered. Uh, so some of the ops transaction monitoring transaction processing jobs will change to transaction monitoring jobs. Uh, you will have uh, more technical generalist, people who are notes 5 4, they are able to span over a couple of areas from cash, trade, forex, etc., rather than just have focused specialists. So I think multi-skill generalists that there'll be rise of that, especially with AI. Relationship management roles again is the AI agnostic skill will remain in banks. But yes, some of the corporate center roles or corporate function roles will change. Even in HR, things will change. So yeah, it'll be fascinating, but new roles will emerge. Like, I never thought I would hire somebody who is from one of the big company, last mile person who looks at just experience. I never thought I would see the day where the person is teaching me, this is how you need to look at it, what the digital experience is, or even personalization. How do you deliver things on person? How do you manage the console? Never thought. But new skills are emerging. So it is going to be fascinating. There's going to be, I think, if one is open to taking on new roles, it's fine. And I'm optimistic there'll be new roles that will get created, new skills that will get created. But for that, people have to step up and not get fixated role to ऐसे ही होगा.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
When
But
you
it'll be especially with the education system and everything, it'll be a bit of a churn, and we won't even know it. Abhijit, every time something happens, sometime a big shift happens, people don't even realize we are in the midst of a big shift. So hoga, but they won't realize it. I think we'll all figure it out. I think in the next 2 years, I would say 18-24 months will be critical to figuring out what models, what formats, etc. But ऐसा तो नहीं होगा ना कि अभी, you're starting now and saying, oh, 24 months later, we'll have the answer. We'll all figure out.
it'll evolve, and then, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. When you hire Gen Z employees today, what do you need to do differently which you didn't have to do before, 10 years back, 15 years back? you didn't have to think about those aspects which you now need to actually inculcate when somebody takes on their first job as a Gen Z member. What is that?
Provide meaning. Provide meaning. Earlier, brand was enough. Talk about what their purpose is in congruence with that. Also, Gen Z seek predictability, are uncomfortable with ambiguity. And work is becoming ambiguous, So steering them through that, which wasn't the case. We would all, at least my manager would give me job and I'll plod my way through it. I wouldn't ask for support and help me kind of thing. The other thing is space for conversations. It's fascinating. I feel it's needed by them, but yet not needed. They're fine with the asynchronous communication. So that steering things there. And I think fourth is also a level of transactional relationships. They network because they've been told to network. If you go to any of the campuses, including our alma mater, they'll say, "Oh, I'm networking. I'm part of so many clubs." And they say, "Okay, where are the deep relationships that you have?" Maybe it's there, but it is, a lot of it is checklist, and this is a scheduled generation, overscheduled. I'm also guilty as charged with my daughter. Very, very scheduled, right? And everything's a checklist and everything has to be perfect. So trying to get them to be a little open is a journey, is the path. But at the same time, they're far more aware. They're far more opinionated. They have opinions, and there's no fear, which I love. There's no fear. There's no fear of anything. But at the same time, some of them there is the entire resilience quotient. How do you take feedback? And I think when I look at that, I said I was no different. So I don't think Gen Z and my generation was different. That's the age. But I think the part on ambiguity and predictability is a real one. They don't want to learn, yet they have to learn. So it's so fascinating. Yeah.
When they think about learning, a lot of them have grown up on the mobile phone, so their learning styles are different. Are you building separate kind of content for them to learn, or has that invited the change in the others?
We're building separate content because nothing stuck around. As I was saying, we were doing the same format of learning, and attention spans are like this. And I said, nothing's working, and you're putting good money behind this entire concept of people will learn. Oh, they are in a job, they need to learn. Oh, they have come to earn. And we need to ensure that they log in some hours before they go and meet the customer, given the responsibility that we carry, which is where we move to this entire bite-sized learning from Instagram. What are they consuming? We ask them, where are they spending time? 4 or 5 hours they're spending on Instagram doom scrolling. All of us are doing burnout without realizing. So that's what everyday content when we piloted, and the fascinating stories, I thought, because we have various strata, and people from certain states and tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns will learn in vernacular language. Not really. We did all those experiments and we realized they want to learn in English. Basic, but English. Then we said, the second thing that we experimented with was, what time should we give? We said, that's a content you can click in. Morning, the first thing in the morning. And it became such a habit with people that initially, because we were doing a pilot, it wasn't close. People who exited out also had access, and we were seeing, why are they still clicking, and asked them. They said, no, we just love clicking it. It's a habit. So essentially, for me, the big thing that's emerged out of this is skill is about now cultivating habits. That's the biggest difference Gen Zs have given me. It's about what can you do to create the habit. The skill is habit. Every skill now we are codifying into habits. What are the habits you want the person to do? Not the routine knowledge, because that's available on your phone, but pitching habit. What are the 3 questions you'll ask? What are the other, like earlier we would do product training as feature, advantages, benefits. No, it's just about objection handling habit. And with this, I think We did this experiment at the front line. We've kind of moved it with different strata everywhere organically. This is one training we don't need to push. Adoption is at high 90%. People who complete it, their take up rate on their productivity, they are seeing a huge difference. So it's building confidence through Instagram and Reels. So yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again for being here. It's been such a delight talking to you. Thank you so much again.
thanks, Abhijit, for having me.